Good evening, everybody. This is our Integrated Human Studies postgraduate group, and tonight we're going to be looking at projects that students have been doing for this second semester. And we've got students from mostly 5-8-12, except for Florence, who is going to be presenting something. I'm not sure if it's your 5-8-09 or 5-8-10 project, Florence. You can let us know when it comes your time. Ellie, how about we start with yours? We're going to have 5 minutes of presentation followed by 5 minutes of question time. So while you're watching everybody's presentation, perhaps you can think of some meaningful questions that not just spring to mind, but will help them with their completion of their project, things that perhaps are a little bit unclear that you think could be made more obvious in their projects, or things that you might have an issue with, if there's any kind of things that don't make sense. Okay, well, look, Ellie, if you're happy to do your screen share now, you can go right ahead.
Ellie, I'm not hearing a voice.
No.
Sorry, it should start in a second.
Because I think you're on the wrong tab for us. We can. I'm
sorry. I was there, but I had to come back to turn my microphone on. Now I can't find it. Oh, here we go.
That's okay.
Here we go. Sorry. Okay, I'm starting it now.
Might make it a little bigger on the screen, full screen. Thank you. I can't hear that. Can everybody hear that?
No.
No, we can't hear it, Ellie.
Okay, hang on a sec.
I think when you share it this way, just playing it directly off the screen, we can only hear what's playing on your computer. I think if you want to do it, you have to use that little YouTube function.
Oh, okay.
Just let me have a look.
Sorry, I haven't done that before.
Or just turn it up. We can do it if you just turn it up.
I turned it up, but I don't think I can get it any louder. Let me just try one more time. That's as loud as I can get it on my...
Welcome to Living Green, my surveying reports for global values and lifestyles in the 21st century. I'm investigating how ecologically sustainable actions impact on our well-being. The inspiration for my survey came from the Happy Planet Index TED Talk by Nick Knights. The New Economics Foundation, who developed the Happy Planet Index, declares that our global challenge in the 21st century is to reduce our ecological footprint, whilst creating and maintaining happy lives for everyone. As Marx simply states, humanity needs good lives that don't cost the earth. So how do ecologically sustainable actions impact on human well-being? Do they have a negative impact? For example, do we perceive them to be sacrificing our current lifestyles? Or can they be good companions to our well-being? Could living green even enhance our happiness? What does the research show? The research indicates that society often perceives the reduction of our ecological footprint to be in conflict with our well-being. The perceived costs to us are higher than any perceived benefits. Although there is limited research in this area, some studies indicate that they are compatible. I developed a short 21-question survey using Google Forms, and all responses were submitted electronically. I asked questions about overall and specific areas of well-being, including satisfaction with career, close relationships, finances, health, and community participation. Other questions included views of the future and participation in specific environmental actions, including spending patterns. An open-ended question regarding the effect of environmental actions on well-being was also included. Demographic data was also collected. Of the 69 responses, only 65 were deemed to be answered with accuracy to the questions. A great response, but still a very small sample. My survey relied on self-reporting, which is not the most accurate way of measuring behaviours and outcomes. Anonymity, as used in my survey, is a method to decrease this effect. So who answered my call? The majority of respondents were female. Most were between 35 to 54 years of age. Most were employed, either in a waged position or self-employed, and most lived with a spouse and their children. What were my results? After enlisting the help of a friend who is an experimental economist and statistician, we could discern no positive or negative correlation to well-being and environmentally sustainable action. My survey is like the little blue dots at the bottom right of your screen. Whilst the respondents, my friends, are pretty happy and most engaged in some environmentally sustainable actions, sustainable actions do not impact positively or negatively on subjective well-being. The open-ended question, however, showed that 30% of respondents reported a positive effect on their well-being. We searched the data for other clues that might provide some insight. The data show that respondents were happier with their close relationships and their careers, which could be useful by focusing on where people are most happy and nudging them to engage in more environmentally sustainable action. Therefore, whether we like to admit it or not, often nights are follow the herd. If our nearest and dearest are engaging in more environmentally sustainable actions, we are more likely as well. The scope of the study in terms of the timeframes and access to potential respondents, along with my lack of experience in the survey, limited potential findings. Future research could include whether linking environmentally sustainable actions to specific elements of well-being and whether it is the everyday habitual actions that are more meaningful, such as recycling or growing your own food, than the one-off actions, such as installing solar panels. Using a combination of new economic foundations finding 5 ways of well-being, as shown here, and the Gallup Pathways Global Wellbeing Survey, the following could be investigated. Financial, saving money. Social, connecting with others to share environmentally sustainable actions. Sense of purpose, not just career, but what you do or learn every day. Being physically active as a means of transport, such as walking, cycling, or jogging. Participating in community actions that increase environmentally sustainable actions, such as the Living Smart program. And most importantly, giving a healthy planet to future generations. Thank you for listening.
That's great, Ellie. Do you want to just turn off the screen share? That
Yes,
way
I'm trying.
Sorry, to the left. to the left.
I'm not even on the proper screen. Here we go.
It's tough, isn't it?
Oh, it's so stressful. Okay.
That's all right. We'll get it going. That's great. It was a little bit hard to hear, but hopefully everybody did hear it enough. Just, I don't know whether I missed this question. Who did you deliver? Who were you surveying? I could see the demographics for your group, but who did you send it out to?
Well, I sent it to my friends. I was thinking of sending it out to Living Smart participants, but we didn't have ethical approval, and also I remember you saying that we shouldn't do that because of the ethical approval, but also I didn't have anyone else to send it to. So, yeah, it was basically my friends.
So could you make some conclusions about those sorts of people? Were they people who do sort of practice, or are aware of sustainability kind of practices in general? Would that have sort of skewed things at all, or did you take that into account?
Yeah, well, it's hard to know. I mean, I assume that they do. I mean, most of them did do some environmental activities, so you have to assume that they're their level of knowledge is high. They also are quite educated people. They live with their children, so what came across as role modelling was quite important to some people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah, that's a good point though, because I have included a little bit in my final report, but I probably need to focus on it a bit more. I've certainly acknowledged that it is not a broad cross-section of society by any means.
Okay. Okay, we might quickly throw to some questions now. Neville, have you got any questions for Ellie? Did you manage to hear that one?
Yes, I did. I turned up the volume and it sounded good. Okay, so you think there's quite a lot of hope in that little lot, that they are really investigating or thinking about other aspects of life that are actually sustainable. So we're talking mostly about sustainability, or what actually makes you happy? Or is it the same?
It's both. I was inspired by a talk by Nick Marks on having good lives and a healthy planet. So that sort of took me on this tangent, and I found this good research project that actually showed that people who engage in pro-environmental actions are actually happier, but they did a pre-survey and they did a post-survey, and it was a very big study, and I think I probably took on a bit more than I could chew, to be honest.
Well, that is the nature of these projects, and that's what they should be. You know, they're not PhDs. They are investigating, and by actually practically doing something, you learn so much more about them. That does raise some fascinating issues that are positive thinkers, or people that declare themselves to be overall how satisfied you are they to some extent self-selected when they start doing sustainable type things? Sorry, I'll try that one again. Are you more is it being sustainable that makes you happy with life, or being happy with life tends to make you more thinking about sustainable ways of living?
Well, what I've found is that people who engage in more environmental behaviours aren't actually any happier than anyone else. They don't report any greater happiness, and they don't engage in more behaviours than those who aren't so happy.
We could just all be miserable, no matter what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Suffering is the human condition. We could get very Buddhist here, but yeah, it is interesting.
Sorry, I'm saying that single question, overall, how satisfied are you, is one of the most useful questions when you're looking globally and internationally. It's said to be one of those questions that most people can seem to resonate to. I would like to ask another question. Overall, how purposeful do you feel your life is? Would that give you a different answer, particularly when you're talking about sustainability? And
quite possibly. I read things in the literature. There was a study, and I can't think of who did it off the top of my head. It might have been Gallup, but I think there were Australians that weren't as happy with their career, and I asked that question as well. I had little subsections of different elements of well-being, and people were more happy with their close relationships and with their career. But what I actually should have asked is their life purpose. Because that could be just the actions that you take every day rather than your actual career itself. So that's an interesting area of study.
It's a bit hard to link these things really in a survey or a short study like this, you know, where you've asked lots of questions. It's a bit hard to tie the threads together really, because there's so many variables and so many, you know, other things that could be coming into play in this sort of thing. Anyway, Neville, you and I hogged the questions here. We might take one from one of the others. Anybody else got a question for Ellie before it's time for the next one? Wanna, do you have anything to ask Ellie?
No, not really.
No. Rachel, do you have a question? No questions. You've answered them all. All right, let's move along to the next one. Okay. Thanks very much, Ellie. Look forward to reading your project.
Thank you.
When it's completed. Okay, Rachel, do you want to do yours next?
Yeah, sure. I might be competing a little bit with some background noise, Hindi music, and some construction work, so I apologize for that. I just
okay.
try and pull up my screen. Sorry, trying to get it all happening. Screen share. See, I might have a problem with the volume also.
Can we play it? Can we play it through the YouTube app? I don't know how that works.
I don't know if with Prezi it goes to YouTube, does it?
Well, you have to put the link into it. If you go to the app on the side, you have to know your link, don't you? Let's have a look. Yeah.
If I press share, that just gives me the link to share it.
That's okay. Let's just see how it goes.
Okay, I'll try this and see. Can you see what my screen is doing right now?
No. Yeah, I can now.
Oh.
Can everybody else see?
Yeah?
Yep, so just turn it up as loud as you can.
I haven't started it yet, just wait. Okay, let's see. For the past 4 years, I have worked in various roles at the local grassroots NGO Educare India, located in northern India. For this case study, my research question is, how can organisations harness the innovation and creativity of young volunteers for positive community change? Educare India is an integrated rural sustainable development and community benefit organisation that was set up in 1994 in northwest India. Educare India has several affiliate programs and projects that specialise in different fields such as education, women empowerment, healthcare, economic empowerment and environmental conservation. Projects currently take place in centres located in 3 geographical states of northwest India, Punjab, Rajasthan and Himachal Pradesh. Educare's vision is to promote pathways to intellectual freedom, social justice, community welfare, economic liberty and sustainable development for individuals, families and social groups working to achieve their rationalised life dreams. Educare's mission is to harness the spirit of social entrepreneurship and volunteerism to establish an innovative, successful and self-sustainable model of development for rural India, to deliver projects that promote a global perspective whilst being rooted in local cultures. Here, the project director, Mr. Jinder Bulla, outlines the key principles of Educare India. Our rural development projects. What? Sorry, everybody. This is Indian internet for you.
Perhaps if he won't load, you might need to give us his message and move to the next slide.
Okay, apologies for the slow Indian internet. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you, Rachel. Can you move? You can't move to the next slide in that, can you? You can maybe just skip him and tell us what he says. briefly.
Okay, yeah, basically what he says is he outlines the 5 principles of Educate India, which is basically it's based on social entrepreneurship is the first thing. So instead of seeking external aid or charity or donations or anything, the money comes from within the organization itself so that it's sustainable. This acts like one, it makes it more sustainable for the projects, but second, it's like a role model for the community that they don't need necessarily like large sums of money or huge foreign donations or something to create solutions for their own problems. So that's one. Second is it's based on volunteerism, so the energy and innovation and whatnot of young people, so it doesn't necessarily need experts, you know, who have had 20 years of like experience or study or anything. That young people with maybe not that much experience but passion can come and like create some positive change. So that also acts like a role model to the communities themselves. Third is it's based on like, I guess, innovation and solution making, so new ideas and that kind of thing. Next one is applied research. So, and then the 5th one is, can't remember, hang on. Yeah, and it's community based. Yeah, the project director, Mr. Bujinder Bulla.
No, I'm talking again. Sorry about the technical glitch. Anyway, we continue.
Our rural development project. Okay, I think it's going to be the same problem again. So basically this was our rural development project. Basically these were just a photo slideshow of our different projects. So it covers like women's empowerment. So we have adolescent girls programs and, sorry everybody. Yes, women's empowerment projects from adolescent girls through to older women. We have economic empowerment or economic development projects, so microfinance, financial literacy, that kind of thing. Various healthcare projects from maternal health, public health, adolescent and reproductive sexual health, these kinds of things. We have various environmental projects such as organic farming, waste management, vertical gardening. We have a project specifically for marginalized groups, so migrant communities or the untouchable kind of caste groups. We have after-school program for children who are not participating in school, and we have education and career resource center, so English classes, IT classes, that kind of thing. Developed from a literature review, assessment of 3 other youth-based organisation inquiry analysis, inquiry approach. I will be interviewing various interns and staff of the organisation in a way to evoke stories that illuminate the organisation's strengths. Appreciative inquiry is a research method that sets out to discover the elements and factors in an organisation that enabled it to achieve success in the past and then builds upon these elements and factors to help the organisation create a positive future. Appreciative inquiry looks for what has made an organisation vital and vibrant and then attempts to build upon those life-giving forces to create a positive vision of the organisation's future. The results of this research will be a basis for further organisational training and development within Educate India in the future. Thank you for your time. Okay, that's it.
That's it. Okay, thanks for that, Rachel. Well, that took up a little bit more time with these hitches, so we'll race quickly through the questions. Neville, we'll start with you, shall we? Do you have anything to say to Rachel?
Not really. It looks like a fantastic group. Overall, is it highly successful and is it appreciated by the community? Have you got resistance to it here?
Sorry, Neville, can you repeat the question?
Okay. I think the whole idea and the whole approach is fantastic. Is it appreciated? Is it welcomed by the local communities? Is there any sort of traditional resistance that you have to deal with?
Generally not, because of the way that we engage the community. So we tend to engage them where they're at, and because it's grassroots approach. And so tends to be that most people are interested in either economic development or education. So we start there, and everyone tends to want more of both those things. And then from there we kind of develop further and branch out and say, okay, well, you're interested in education, economic development, we can support you with that. But at the same time, like, we need to look into the environmental problems in your area, because they also affect like your health and will affect the health of your, you know, children and this kind of thing. So we start where they are most interested, and then when we build the trust and the relationships, it develops into broader things that we are also more conscious of that perhaps they're not quite conscious of yet.
My guess is, I mean, that's fascinating. My guess is that one of your real strengths is being there and developing trust. You know, from my experience, until you do these things, but until you've actually been there, people accept you, they get to know you, they get to like you, things don't happen. Is that true for this group, or?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Community relationships is a big part of it. So when they realize that we're actually kind of partners with them, it's not about us coming in with grand ideas or something. It's about developing solutions together to some of the issues that they face. Then, I mean, they're very supportive, actually, very, very supportive.
Right.
Can I just ask a question? You sort of basically described what you do. Have you been able to, given that you are part of this organisation, how have you found being able to actually really analyse it? Have you been able to achieve any of that objectivity? We talked about this earlier, that you're a little bit concerned about, you know, reviewing your own organisation. How's that gone for you?
Yeah, well, I struggled with this for a while, and that's why I decided, like, in the methodology to use this appreciative inquiry approach, because it was easy for me, I've found, to fall into like a very critical viewpoint, and everything, even the literature, like, kind of supported my own critical lens. So I wanted to get some more feedback from other people that work there through a more appreciative approach. And I mean, it's been actually really good, and so therefore also the literature I've been reading and stuff has been kind of more, I think, broadened because of that as well, because at first I was, I guess, trying to deal with my own, like, I don't know, workplace issues or something. So, you know, I had to kind of move beyond that. So I found that I have been able to do that, which is a good thing as well.
Yeah, I know that's always a challenge in anything, is trying to see, you know, to be able to rate your own perspective and analyse your own perspective. But when you're right in there, it's a difficult thing. Oh, that's good you've been able to. And you write about that, do you, in the project?
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, one more question. Anybody have a question for Rachel?
Yeah, I do. I noticed that excellent presentation, Rachel. I'm sorry you had those difficulties, but just from my living in Mozambique, I find that there's not much of a plan for NGOs to actually leave the country, because I guess there's so much. Does your organisation have any sort of end point where they hope that they'll be able to pull out and the community will be able to manage everything themselves?
Yeah, that's actually the aim. So I mean, it's kind of a long discussion, this one, but yeah, the aim is that we want to create village-based solutions. We work with the community at first as role models, and together, like, in partnership, as I said, and gradually we step back. We gradually, like, we start different projects with them. For example, the Education and Career Resource Centre, which is a way of bringing higher education to the communities themselves, especially for women who sometimes aren't able to leave the village because their parents don't allow them, or they feel it's not safe, or they want to get married, or XYZ reasons. So we bring education to them, and gradually we step further and further back so that they're actually running these programs themselves. So it's a form of self-empowerment, and we have a strategy where we spread to different villages over time, and we step back from the ones that have been initiated like previously. So it's definitely a mechanism for them to take over and own in the future. That's actually the aim or the purpose.
Thanks, fantastic.
That's great. Okay, Neville, do you have to leave, or do you like to stay for one more?
I think I can stay for one more. I should be right.
Okay, all right. Eeny, meeny, miny, Wanna, do you want to go next? Thanks so much for that, Rachel. That was terrific.
No problem.
I noticed everybody shared them already in the G+, so we can go in and watch them, hopefully without any technical issues. So that will be great. Okay, thanks, Rachel. Okay, Wanna, if you'd like to start yours.
Yes.
Wanna's also doing 5812, so she'll have a case study.
Angela, did you see that Lorena was trying to get into the call?
Well, she was trying to call me, but I couldn't interrupt it. I'll see if I can invite her.
Oh my gosh, where is it now? Can you see it?
Yes, that's great.
Okay. Let me start now. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to give you my presentation on effectiveness of community participation in environmental conservation. And I did that through a case study of one of environmental groups in Perth, which is known as the Swan History Reserve Action Group, and they abbreviated as CIRAGE. CIRAGE was formed in 2010 in response to continuous degradation of important area, and this degradation was mainly due to human-induced activities such as land clearing for development and recreational services. So as a result, it leads to loss of biodiversity and destruction of important habitats. So in order to address this problem, Perth community formed this group so that they can rehabilitate or restore and even conserve these special and sensitive areas before they could lose their ecological values. So the aims of this group is mainly to conserve, restore, and rehabilitate 3 important areas along the Swan River. And these areas are the Milus in South Perth, Alfred Cove in Millville, and the Pelican Point in Crawley. So the group has got 3 major aims: to conserve and protect the area, because this area are very important. They have displayed to be of great ecological value because they provide habitats for birds and small mammals, and they also provide nesting areas for migratory birds, and they have shown to be at a greater risk of losing their ecological value. So before that could happen, CIRAGE decided to do something about it. And then this group also support other groups which have got activities which are involved in protecting these areas. And it also educates the wider communities about conservation of the 3 areas. So I also looked at the organizational structure of the group. So it is made up of 2 main bodies, the executive committee and the community. So the executive committee is made up of the chairperson, the vice chairperson, the treasurer, the secretary, and the volunteer coordinator. And the chairperson has displayed a good leadership skills because she has been a chairperson since the group was formed. And then the community is made up of the youth, conservation groups, fundraising groups, volunteers, partners, and sponsors. So all these work hand in hand in order to achieve their goals. So what this group does is that every year they have annual general meetings where they evaluate the existing committee and see if they can replace members or they can continue with members. And the main role of this committee is to direct and drive activities that would lead to achievement of their goals. So I also evaluated the success and challenges that this group face, and I've realized that the success of this group is attributed to commitment of members and cooperation. They work hand in hand. They make sure that they attend activities together, and then they also have different subgroups that lead different activities. The success is also due to a strong executive committee. This is the chairperson, Catherine, who's been there since 2010. And the committee gets feedback from people, consult people, and then they evaluate their plans and see if they are sustainable or not. And then the other success is due to public and stakeholder involvement. The group does not just do things on their own. They consult the public, they consult people in those areas, and they involve them in decision making and also in different activities. So as a result, they had successful projects. I have examples of these projects. There was the weeding project in the Alfred Cove Reserve, where they removed invasive species and replaced them with indigenous species. And they also introduced what they call Weeding Wednesdays, whereby the people volunteer to go and remove the weeds. They also installed artificial nesting boxes after habitats were destroyed, so that birds, small mammals, and other small creatures, they can nest in those beds. They also have erosion control, where they identified a severely degraded area and then they fenced that area so that it can recover, and they also planted shrubs to restore the soil and protect it from wind and water erosion. Then the other project is that of community outreach and education, where they part their skills, knowledge with the community and involve them in conservation of these resources. And then the challenges that they faced, funding is the main challenge because they don't have funds themselves. They depend on donors and they make project proposal and ask for funds. And then the other challenge is that people are not willing to volunteer. Only few people volunteer, and the group is mainly made of adults. There are no youth involved, so if these people retire and they are no longer active, then I'm just wondering if it will be sustainable. And then the other problem they have is how do they make the public aware of them. So as such, if these challenges are addressed, I think this group can go far. But as far as I've seen, they are doing a good job. That's all. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Mona. There's something to be said for just having the slides and speaking live. It's one less thing to go wrong. I think that was great. I've got a Google on Google. I can see myself talking, so we might need to stop the screen share now.
Okay.
On screen share.
Okay.
Talking to myself.
Okay.
That's better.
Did I stop it?
That's better. I can see you now. Thank you. I just had one quick question. I don't know whether I missed that. Do they have scientific people who are members who are scientific advisors in the group?
Yes.
Yeah. Experts?
The executive members, some of them are retired scientific officers. They have knowledge on environmental conservation.
Okay. So they're the ones who've kind of got the group together.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Neville, do you have a question before you have to head off?
That was very neatly done, Juan. I thought it was great. How do you, that's fantastic. I mean, very successful group, but you have your worries about the future. Did you express any of those worries to them about the sort of succession plans or getting more youth involved? Did they want you to comment? Did they consider help them in terms of thinking about the future?
Yes, I don't know whether I get your question, but what I did is when I attended one of the activities and then tried to find out about their future plans and past projects, they mentioned that they got a lot of ideas, but the problem is they can't implement all those because of funding. But they have ideas that they share through project proposals. Like if they want to ask for funding, then they have to prepare a proposal to say this is what we are going to do, this is how it will restore, or this is how it will conserve this reserve. So they do have a lot of information on the reserves.
Yeah, I was thinking particularly of how they're going to encourage youth to come in and help them. Did they have any ideas there? I mean, you identified difficulty of getting younger volunteers involved. Did they have any policy where they could build that?
No, they don't have a policy. I'm not sure of that. But what I know is that their concern was how do they make the public aware of them? Because, like I said, the group is made of people who have retired. There's only very few youth there. So maybe probably what we can do is to go out and share with people that there's this group that exists, and we can encourage more people to volunteer, because they are really looking forward to having the youth in their executive committee so that they can groom them, you know.
I think that's a problem with a lot of groups, but it also, if they can get the younger ones to come in, you know, then they have all the tools of social media and other ways of kind of engaging other people of their age. And sometimes that's a problem. In a group I looked at when I was a student, they wanted younger people, but then when they got younger people in, it said, let's, you know, have things on Facebook and get our website going. Then the older ones were quite resistant to some of the ideas that the younger ones had. So sometimes it's just problematic operating together, depending on how established the group is, whether they actually want newcomers or not.
Yeah, because I was hoping that maybe they could have a Facebook page where they can share their activities and maybe events with people, but they don't have that so far. So I think social media could help them in one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay, Rachel or Florence, do you have any questions for Juana? We've got time for a couple. No questions from her. Lorena? Anything jump out at you? I think it was pretty straightforward. I think you covered most things there. That was great. Okay, well, we might move to the next one. If you want to, if you need to go, Neville, that's fine. We can carry on. Or stay. You're muted for the minute. We can't hear you if you're saying something.
I had to drift off about 10 minutes ago, but I'll sneak up when nobody's looking.
Okay, all right, terrific. Thanks, Neville. Okay. Okay, now, who else? Oh, sorry.
I just thought I'd say that one of that was really good. It was really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, Kelly's not here, but Kelly actually phoned me and said, I'm really struggling because, you know, I've got this group and, you know, similar sort of issues that you're talking about, you know, a good group with great aims and great things that they're doing, but, you know, almost stagnant in terms of, you know, how they're going to move into the future. So we had a long talk about the fact that that's quite normal, and that perhaps one of the things that would help her with her project would be if you actually do a little bit of research, it doesn't take much, into some of these problems that small community groups have with recruiting new members and moving forward, because it is quite well studied, this kind of phenomenon about volunteering and what happens to these groups, because they tend to have similar kinds of dynamics and similar problems. Often the people who are a bit older now have been very active. They're in their youth have been active because they've sort of come out of a period of the 60s and 70s where environmental movements were really blossoming, and so they've continued those kind of activities. And they're not finding that younger generations are the same, whether it's because people in their 30s and 40s don't have the kind of extended family support to go and volunteer as much, or whether it's just not a cultural thing to do, it's just not what they do. So there's sort of quite well studied phenomenon. So you might want to have a look at the broader context of volunteering in these kind of community groups and see if you can see that, you know, whether your group fits into a normal pattern, or you know, perhaps you can find things that other groups do to overcome these problems. Just a bit wider research. But yeah, maybe when Kelly does hers, you might want to join that group as well and listen, and you might find some similarities there.
Okay.
You know, when you're looking at Rachel's, for example, and you know, obviously that isn't that sort of organisation where you're drawing on the community. They're working with the community for the community, whereas this is the community working for a sort of environmental thing. It is for the community, but it's different. So, you know, maybe it's just a particular type of people that do that kind of activity. Might be worth looking at. Okay, we might move to the next one because it's getting a bit late. Abhijit, I'm not sure if that's how we pronounce your name because I haven't said it before. How do you say your name?
Just Abhi is fine.
Abby's fine. Yeah. Okay, welcome. This is Abby's first tutorial with us, so he's going to be coming in cold and hoping the screen share works. So are you ready to do yours now?
Yeah, but I don't have any audio file attached to my PowerPoint, so like the previous one, I'm just going to wing the slideshow.
Well, that would be good because tonight the technology's not helping us. It's not doing us any favours, so that might work better. Okay. So do you know how to get the screen share happening on the side?
I'm trying.
That's okay. No, you just have to see it. Terrific. Okay.
All right. Can everybody see this?
Yes, that looks great. I can see it.
All right. So my project is based on tribal welfare in South India, and basically I will be performing a case study into a very local NGO called Maiwa, and this is basically set in it's set up in a very small village in Tamil Nadu. So first, let's look at some of the problems faced by tribal societies in India. The first and probably the most important one is isolation. Since most of the tribal societies live in very isolated parts of India, and there are some, especially in the northeastern parts, where you couldn't even access them by roads. So this isolation is the primary reason behind the neglect from society and everything, and this leads to lack of education, economic opportunities, and proper healthcare facilities. And because of that, there's a prevalence of social issues like child marriage and caste system. Now, these are the 7 primary tribal groups in Tamil Nadu, and they live in the Nilgiri Hills, which is just off the Western Ghats. Now, this is the local NGO which I was talking about. It's called the Mavanalla Youth Welfare Association. It first started out as just a volleyball club, but some of the youngsters who started, who came there later on, they started taking an initiative into promoting a better quality of life for the tribal communities. And some of the funding agencies of Maiwa include Good Neighbors International from Korea, Safe Foundation from the UK, ABC from Sweden, and Little Angels from Switzerland. And the aim of this NGO is continuing the improvement for the tribal societies in the area of Mavanalla, such as increasing the income and food security, giving all the children an opportunity for education, secure the healthcare, and developing the agricultural industry in the villages. Now the aim of my project is to determine the efficacy of local NGOs by conducting an analysis of the welfare activities carried out by Maiwa. And since most of Maiwa's work revolves around education, healthcare, and occupational development, I collected most of this data over a period of 6 months when I was a volunteer. And some of the results of Maiwa's work includes the reduction of the rate of school dropout from 70% to 0 within the span of 2 years. and a rapid increase in the attendance in schools. They have also increased employment opportunities within the state as well as in other states, and improved methods of alternative income generation. And they've also improved sanitation to a great deal, and also the eradication of scabies. And right now they are trying to branch out from being just a socially centered organization to being an environmentally centered organization as well. But they are they're just pulling out from helping the tribal communities. So that's going to take a little bit of time. Yeah, that's it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have a lot of time to make this presentation. I was working on my thesis as well. So.
Oh no, that's great. No, look, I think just being able to verbalize it like that's great. So I just hope in your project that you'll have some visuals, because we had to sort of use our imagination a bit there. Do you have images and things to put in the project? Sounds like
I do have a couple of pictures. Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, it sounds like you've got a bit of crossover with the sorts of things that Rachel's group are doing in your one. Obviously a different focus, but some of those things were you had a few things in common there. Have you got any questions there for Abby? Rachel, you know, it's obviously something that's quite similar. I know it's a very big country, so we might say they're both in India, but you're right up the north and this is way down the south, so I don't know how culturally similar they are, if at all.
No, they're not.
No, not really.
No.
Which part of Tamil Nadu is that's, I don't know if I'm too loud in the speaker there. Which part of Tamil Nadu is it?
It's a very small village called Masnagudi. It's about 350 kilometers away from Chennai.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it looks really good.
It's closer to the border of between Karnataka and Tamil Nadu.
Okay. So yeah, I guess had a question or a comment that at what point did, like you say, these communities are tribal groups and sometimes they don't even have access, like road access or whatever, to kind of, I guess, more general society. So at what point did they come in contact with, I guess, Western civilization or whatever, and how has that had an impact on their aspirations or their level of health or whatever? Because I know that in the north, I mean, it's a different social and demographic and geographic kind of setup, but when some of the communities here became more westernized or globalized, it had quite a dramatic effect on people's, like, one, their aspirations. So people tend to want to be more economically prosperous, even beyond their needs, more into, like, you know, big concrete houses and stuff, if you look at Punjab and all of this kind of stuff. But also the difference in diet. So when more Western food and this kind of thing came more prominence in shops and whatever, that there's so much increased risk of, like, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all of these kinds of things. So I just wonder, like, when did they become connected with kind of like this more Western culture, or are they already, and how is it affecting their culture and, like, their health?
They aren't really connected to Western culture as such. It's the thing about especially Tamil Nadu, as the entire state, it's very conservative, very set in its ways. So basically what Maiwa is just doing is just giving them alternative ways to earn money and improving the sanitation and promoting education. These three are the basic things that they're doing, and the rest is up to them. Like how much exposure they want to Western civilization or Western culture is up to them.
Okay, so there's not much tourism or, like, anything like that in the area, or even, like, are there small shops and stuff that sell Maggi noodles and Coke and everything? That's
but very small stuff.
Okay. Okay.
But most of them are just grocery shops, and these communities mainly live in the forests, and throughout throughout the years they've been surviving on produce from the forests.
Okay. And how
So
is that having an effect on deforestation and that kind of thing?
no, not really, not at all actually, because from the main environmental aspect that Maiwa is currently looking at is the setup of industrial factories and river valley projects and stuff like that in the area, because I actually posted this in one of the forums on IHS 5812. Some of the environmental disasters that Modi is personally signed his name for, and those one of those laws that he has passed include he has allowed industries to be set up within a 5 kilometer radius of national parks and sanctuaries, which is just terrible. And down south, there's a huge diversity of animals, and that's just going to ruin everything. So from an environmental standpoint, that's what Maiwa is focused on. But
I think Lorena has sort of talked about this kind of stuff happening in Colombia, really, haven't? And you know, it sort of rings true of those areas where there's still people that mightn't be tribal but still living a lot more traditional lives. I think Lorena posted pictures, was that in one of the forums, of mining and things alongside the river that just devastates these more traditional lifestyles, and you know, people sort of do get involved, but it doesn't really help them in the long run. Have you got any questions on that one, Lorena?
No, not really. No, not really. I don't have any question, but no, I don't have in this moment.
Yeah, that was just I think that was one of the earlier forums where we talked about that similar kind of thing.
Yeah, we have, for example, in Colombia, some communities that are living in a traditional way, but the introduction of the Western style of life change the way that there are thinking and the thing that they want. So we can see in some native communities that people don't want to follow the customs. They want to go to the cities and start to work, and they lose everything in their own culture. So I don't know if it happened in India as well. Also, some communities were with the land, but we have a very huge security problem. Some of those groups that are illegal, they use the people and the innocent of the people. And now people are destroying the environment because they have to do that, because if they don't do it, they are going to be killed. So, okay, we have other kind of problems in Colombia. But there are a lot of NGOs that are working as well. And they try to help those people don't be give the tools to continue with her culture, and don't be manipulated by those people, the other people that only want their own benefits.
Can I ask a question, Neville, since you're still here? They're interesting projects. It's hard to just walk away. I think, is this, would you say this, Neville, is globalization? Is this just, you know, where we're talking in Tamil Nadu, where you've got people who are not asking for industry to suddenly appear on their back doorstep, or, you know, just people, population encroaching? Is it Western things encroaching? Is it industry encroaching? What do you think this common thread happening here is, Neville?
I don't know. I'd like to just say one thing. I've been absolutely fascinated with these talks. I come away realising that every single place has its unique problems and opportunities. That's come around loud and clear. I just asked the question, wouldn't it be marvellous if we could take some of your ideas to our own Australian Indigenous groups? I suspect we can't. So I think probably there is no commonality. Every single group has got its regional issues, and with great people like yourselves looking at them, you and the group themselves, the people living there, are going to be finding the solutions. We can't just give a blanket bunch of solutions to everyone. And that's what you're all telling us, I think.
Well, certainly that's what Rachel's saying, isn't it? That there's, you know, in the one country, they're very different.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, even like in the 3 states that we work, which are all adjoining states, the culture, the demographics, and the geographics are so totally different. And I always feel like India is more like Europe than a homogenous country in itself. You know, it's the culture, the language, the food, everything is totally different from each region. So our approach as well has to change in response to the community and the environment wherever we go. So yeah.
Well, that's interesting. All right, well, we might need to move on to the next one now. Maybe we've run out of time. Florence, Lorena, were you going to present at this one, or can you present at one of the other ones?
I'm not going to present today.
Oh,
so sorry,
okay.
because I arrived late. I was thinking that it was on Thursday.
That's okay.
So,
There is one on Thursday, but we had technical issues, so we started a little bit late. So that's okay.
So
we didn't start until a bit later. Well, look, we can probably do another 5 minutes with Florence, and then that way everybody's managed to get one, because Florence has got 2 to do all up. So Florence.
No, I'll do mine. I think Ellie really wants to do hers tonight, so I'll do mine on Thursday.
She can do her second one later, and we can make another session if we need to later. So why don't we just do Florence and...
I can do one of mine on Friday.
Okay, Neville has to... Neville, you have to go. So you're saying you have to go, and Arby, you might like to look in the chat down the side, because Rachel's left you a message. Can you see the chat? You have to click on your left-hand side. You have to click the little chat thing, and it appears on the right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Neville. You can watch the recording later. Okay. Thank you. All right. Florence, why don't you do one?
Okay. What about Ellie? I thought she wanted to do her other one.
She's okay. She's shaking her head. I've got a cat just coming.
I'm having computer issues, Florence, so you go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll have to find it. Hold on.
You don't have to if you don't want to. You can do it on Thursday. That's okay.
No, but mine, I just thought because Ellie's will be the 5, 8, 12 like everybody else's, and mine's something totally different. That's all.
That's okay.
But I will find it. Hold on. Let me think.
So Florence is doing 5809 and she's doing 58010. They're the first 2 units of the diploma. So if you're going to do 5810 now?
No, the other one.
5809?
Yeah.
Okay, this unit is called Dimensions of the Human Experience, and it's a really interesting unit. And it goes into a lot of philosophy, a lot of theory of mind, a lot of things about consciousness and social consciousness and transcendence, all sorts of things. And the final project that Florence will be working towards is a multimodal artifact. It's not a text-based project, so it's quite challenging. So we'll leave you to explain what you've done or what you're trying to do, Florence. I don't know how far you've got with it at this point, but it's great that you can do a presentation.
Can you see it now?
Yep, I can see that.
So if I do that, you can still see it?
Yep.
Okay then, right. Well, this is my project, is Chasing Immortality, a one-way street to nowhere. There we go. Humans have probably been chasing immortality since evolving consciousness. Consciousness made us aware of mortality, allowed us to start asking the big questions, and allowed us to construct stories to create meaning. The idea for this project started with a TED talk by Stephen Cave. It's the 4 stories of immortality. There's the elixir story, the resurrection story, soul story, and the legacy. The modern equivalents brought to us by technology. For elixir, it's bioengineering, keep the level of damage to a minimum. The resurrection story is the cryogenics, where people freeze all of themselves or just their brain and hope to be revived in the future. The soul story is upload the contents of the brain into a machine, and a legacy story is the genetics and fame. There is another alternative, and that's wisdom. Epicurus said, while we are, death is not. When death is come, we are not. Death is thus of no concern either to the living or to the dead. Stephen Cave suggests we imagine life as a book, and even though a book is limited by beginning and end, the characters within it only know the moments that make up their story, even when the book is closed. Some find this to be a ridiculous idea. They say there's no possible benefit in aging and a natural life cycle. My first title idea arrived at that stage. Could you live forever and still be you? Asking the big questions in an age of life extension and transhumanism. My next idea came from a video added to Google Plus by Angela. Like Daisy said, that gift of death is what defines us. That gift is what makes us human. The arc of our days ensures that we will live a life that is measured. Another post to Google Plus by Camilla led to an interesting and thoughtful website. It has some useful content, and many of the articles show how art can be used to illustrate ideas. And the course content reminded me about worldview. Loss and upheaval can cause people to reassess their priorities. And then I just decided there seems to be more questions than answers in this topic. Some of the questions are: why seek immortality? Is it rational? Who would gain? Who would lose? What do people really want? A good life? A healthy life? A long life? A meaningful life? And what is realistically possible? If life is just existence, is a longer life better? That little illustration was, I don't know if you know the Pink Floyd song from Time, where you run and run and you catch up with the sun and thinking. Further research led me to a fascinating report by the President's Council on Bioethics. I found that immortality in the literature usually means a lifespan to the current limit of about 120 years. That's how old the oldest people live to, except for transhumanists. And people could still die from trauma or disease. Life extension can take 3 basic forms: youth, prime and ageing all extended, youth and ageing about the same and the prime years stretched out, or youth the same, prime years about 30 years old stretched, and then you suddenly die. To be continued. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, so have you decided what form your final project's going to take yet?
No. No.
Well, that's going to be interesting.
If I go my original idea and do the haiku poems or something, I don't know.
This is one of the challenges of this particular unit, is that you can't do a text-based project. You have to somehow represent this in some kind of creative way, and we've had students doing all sorts of things, and Florence is a bit stuck. So because she's doing 2 units, I think the plan was to focus on 5, 8, 10 first and then come back to this. Is that still the plan, Florence?
Oh, well, I don't know. You said I have to do all the research and write it out anyway. And, well, I suppose that, you know, whatever. You're supposed to do all the aims and the introduction and the whatever you found. I don't know which part of it. I'm not quite exactly sure which part of it is the artistic or whatever it is, representation. Is that instead of the discussion?
No, well, the whole thing. You might have to have that chat to Carmela about that. She's very good on that one. But yeah, I think it would be how you would represent the ideas and the message in a way that you're not explaining it by text necessarily. It's quite challenging, but as everybody else in that unit found, like, you know, I don't know if actually just putting this presentation together helps you draw some of those ideas together. And I think even Sarah last semester kind of ditched her idea and just focused really tightly on one of those elements and was able to then expand back out, much like the projects for anything else. You know, once you've kind of found a focus, you can talk more deeply but also more broadly about that one aspect. You're still drawing many aspects into it, so I dare say you've got a bit of work still to do, still a bit of thinking to do before it's going to occur to you how you're going to represent that idea. We can have a chat if you like.
I tried out a few ideas in that presentation. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah,
we know that Pink Floyd song and stuff like that.
Well, there's some great ideas, and in fact, you know, that quote from that Mike Daisy, I don't know if the rest of you saw that in the G+ when we were actually talking about corporations, and that's actually a really good quote. It doesn't really look like it's coming from a talk about corporations, but you know, even that in itself, you could do a whole thing just on that thing. And I think what we talked about before was that movie In Time with Justin Timberlake was actually almost all about just that one concept. So even if that's a clue to creativity, that somebody can make a whole movie about that one little quote, it's a little bit what I'm talking about here, is that you could focus on any part of those things and try to not maybe represent it, but go into it a bit more deeply in a visual way. But yes, do you need to have a talk outside of this at some time where we can thrash these ideas out? You just give me an email if you want to.
Okay.
And I can maybe help you narrow it a bit. But no, that looked great. Anybody got any questions for Florence or any help, any suggestions? Because it's a very challenging unit, this one, particularly at the end. We're all looking a bit blank there.
I think
Rachel,
they weren't expecting something like that.
It's going right away from the practical. What do you think about that, Rachel? You're a person who gives a lot of thought to matters spiritual.
I love it.
Florence?
I love it. I think it's excellent. Yeah, I was just thinking during your presentation, Florence, that I don't know, like, in what angle you want to like look at this kind of topic from, or maybe you're not even sure yet yourself, but I kind of wondered if you've looked into some spiritual teachers' ideas on the nature of consciousness, and looking at it from that kind of perspective as well maybe might bring another kind of like element to it, which may make it more confusing or may provide a different insight or something. Teachers like Muji and even the Dalai Lama, like what their idea about consciousness is, and how there's already kind of this belief or philosophy that it already is eternal. The body is naturally not, but the consciousness itself is. So I don't know, like, if you're looking at it purely from a metaphysical point of view in terms of physical immortality, or if you're looking like a holistic thing or whatever. But yeah, I really like these ideas and these topics. So
I was sort of looking at it from you know, from the point of view of all the technology that's around to you know, that people think that they're going to bring on immortality, and you know, there's these two arguments, two sides to it. That some people think that, you know, the technology is going to save us and we need to have this immortality, and other people say that aging is natural and that, you know, you should just accept aging, and that's part of life, and death is part of life, really. And
so it's more physical then, the physical concept of immortality.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, perhaps you need to just focus on those, on the two kinds of questions. I mean, in the slide where you had, you know, prolonging life, if we could prolong life, which bit would you prolong? Because at the moment, where our life expectancy's getting greater and greater, it seems to be the kind of decrepit end that we're extending longer and longer. We're not really proportionately extending the prime bit in the middle. So, you know, even one whole topic could be, if you could extend life, what would that look like, and what would that do? You know, it's still there's still very many, you know, lots of different things embedded even in this presentation. So I still think for your project you could probably either, you could still, you know, narrow it down to a couple of those things and throw a few things out, or bring them into the same sort of question, like that sort of length of life, as Rachel's saying, is very physical. But the other question that you asked from the Mike Daisy about the arc of life defining our humanity, that's not quite so physical. That's a sort of temporal element that you bring to it. So they're still quite I wouldn't say they're disconnected ideas, but you haven't kind of started to draw the threads together yet. So I think that might be the clue, is to pull the drawstring a bit tighter and see what that looks like.
Okay.
Pull it in a bit closer. It's certainly very interesting. Okay, I think we've gone well over our hour this time, so we should probably call it a day. I'll put this tutorial, this recording up in the G+, but everybody's projects are looking great, and hopefully we've been able to give a few suggestions as to other things you might be able to look at just as you're writing up and pulling your research together. So thank you to everybody for coming. It's great, and sorry about the technical things. It seems to have kind of settled down a bit towards the end, and certainly for those of you that talked us through it, that was a welcome relief that we didn't have any more issues to live through for this one. Okay, thanks very much, and we'll see you. Please, even if you've presented and you'd like to come and join the Thursday group or the Friday group just to listen, more than welcome to do that, or watch the recording. Okay, night everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Angela. Good night.
Night.